E to C Stitch with Me number 4. We are working on the Racon Cabin. It's a country cottage needleworks pattern, and it belongs to the Frosty Forest series. And this is the first part. So this is the pattern, and this is how far we have gotten. So it has been a few days since last time I recorded. So hope I can get some good stitching in tonight. And this is stitched on a 32 count Belfast pearl gray linen. The cut is 18 by 18 inches, and it is cut that size to fit all 9 patterns in the Frosty Forest series. I explain more about the series and where I have gotten everything I needed in my the first video of this series. So if you are curious where I have gotten everything, then go and watch that one and I explain. So let's see, last time I think we worked down this tree a good part and then took the border down, and I think that the border is still what I will continue working on now. And I might also, we'll see. I have pulled 2 of the DMCs, the 869, which is the color of the 3, and one of the colors of the house itself. I think maybe, no, that's another color. It's the darker shade of brown in the house. And I have pulled 469, which is the pines or leaves on the tree. I think it's pine trees, so the pine needles is green. So we will just start and see how long we will get. I have remembered to put in a charger from the beginning, and I hope in this sit down to see multiple parts, but you will still see them when they releases. If I can get enough parts filmed before the 29th of December, when the first video came for you now would have came out, I hope to get maybe one of these Stitch With Me's in each week. So let's get started. As normal in this series, if I suddenly just turn silent and just stitch without saying anything, I will speed it up just a tiny bit and turn some music on. And if not, you will hear me talk. So, we working down this border. It's a little bit tricky with these one stitch border to get the stitches to lay really nice. So I need to pay close attention to how I stitch and how the stitches are laying. This is much easier now than it was the last time, because the last time I had to have my fabric much further away when filming, and I needed to have my head a little bit to the side because the blitz on my camera wouldn't work, so we didn't get that good light on the fabric and so on. So much better today. And I still think that I will put on my glasses. I have some reading glasses that I actually don't need. I got them for a test to see if they would remove my migraines that I was struggling with. They didn't help, but it is reading glasses with just a tiny bit of strength in them. So I have found them to be useful when stitching, especially now that I still have to sit just a tiny bit further away than I normally like to sit when I stitch. Normally, a good rule for me is if the frame is on the height with my breast, that is a good height and a good distance from my face. If it's longer than that, I usually take my glasses on just so I don't strain my eyes so much. You can think for yourself, when you're reading a book, you will often sit with the book pretty close to your face to not strain your eyes too much. So it's only natural when the distance is a little bit longer for me to take on my glasses and help my eyesight. Even though I have a perfect eyesight, I still want to keep it that way as long as I can. So it's still important to be careful about it. Let's see how far I stitched. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. You would believe I was counting while stitching. This time I actually was not, but I ended up exactly where I was supposed to. And then there is a little jump. The stitches don't look, this leg don't look. Let's see if this helps. Yeah, so far so good. Yeah, that looks much better. So, making this small corner over here. Just trying to... That stitch didn't look right. I will need to backtrack. Because I am picky about how my stitches are laying and looking. And now I'm just trying to stroke the floss underneath just to make it not turn. And I think maybe I will railroad the top stitch. And railroading is basically when you have 2 or more strands, stitching with 2 or more strands, you take your needle in between the 2 strands before going down the hole, which basically will make the stitches lay nicer beside each other. So I don't often railroad, but I will if the floss continue to misbehave. Okay, so let's see. What do I want to do? I can either do half stitches going over one direction. Maybe I will do that. And then I think next time, I don't think I have enough to go all the way to the other side and back, but what I can do next time is do this this edge of the outer border and go down 1 stitch at a time and just stitch my way 1 X at a time until I get to the half stitches, and then complete the stitch on this row going back. But I'm not sure if I want to do that or do just 1 stitch at a time. And I think maybe I will just do 1 stitch at a time. Just make it a little bit less to think about. And since most of this border already are done in 1 stitch at a time, I think it's a good thing to just continue doing it that way. Because there is a tiny difference in how the X's lay from when I do 1 X at a time or when I do it the Danish method, where I will do the half stitches, just do the half of the stitch 1 direction and go back and complete the cross with the stitch on top. So I think it will look best just doing it 1 at a time. And if I had known or just thought about it a little bit more when I started, I probably should have done 1 X at a time in the beginning in the first part, but too late to do. I will see when the border is complete if I can see too much of a difference, because then I think I will frog and just redo those stitches. And oh, I'm so sorry you haven't seen the stitches going the other direction. I thought you could see the bottom, but you couldn't. So I'm so sorry, but I have basically just stitched one X at a time over. An A to C stitch with me, that is just the name I gave this series to show the difference in this stitch with me and other stitch with me's, because what it means for me, at least, that's why I gave it that name, A to C, is that I will do everything that needs to be done on camera, and I should say as long as it is possible. Like now, there was some stitches you didn't see just because I didn't have it in frame. And I don't want to frog it just to re-stitch them so you can see them. But it means I will do everything on camera. That includes all of the stitching. I also try to say what I think about how I want to stitch and continue stitching, and just the thought process of how I stitch, basically. That may not be exactly the same for everyone else. And sometimes I really like to see, when I see someone stitch something, I like to see everything people do, because it really shows me things I haven't thought about before, etc., etc., that can make my stitching go better or easier, or just in a way that I want to do things. It's a way of learning more about stitching. So that's why I call this A to C stitch with me, because I try to show everything on camera. And I also try and explain most of the things I do, either if it has been explained before or if I will explain it in the future. So what you just saw me do is how I pull one strand of floss out of the skein, and now I have folded it in two, so I have a little loop here at the end, because when I stitch 2 over 2 or 2 over, I like to use the loop method. And again, how I thread my needle, basically just push the floss through the hole after I have made it go, I make it go around the needle and tighten it. So I get a little loop between my fingers, and I just take the eye and press down on the floss, and it threads itself. So what I think I will do now is I am going to go back up here and stitch down, so it will be easier to find this edge without having to count too much. So that is what I will do. And in the beginning I was thinking maybe do one strand of white and one strand of another color each time I stitch, but the reality is there is a lot of white on this picture. If you can see here, there is a bunch of snow. So if I do that, I probably will end up having to stitch just white in the end. And for me, that is not a problem, but I think that can be a little bit boring for you guys. So I will try something new and do 2 lengths or 1.5 lengths of white and then do a few stitches of another color until most of the white is done. So you can see that all right, that's good. And I am really enjoying stitching this so far. I think maybe I commented that in my last video also, but this is truly a joy to stitch. Last time when I filmed and I had to stop stitching because my phone didn't have any more batteries, because the batteries kept keeping drain even though I charged it while filming. So I had to stop, and that meant I had to stop stitching so you can see everything of the process of stitching a cross stitch. So that forced me to stop, and I felt really sad afterwards because I really wanted to just put a few more stitches in this one because it's so fun. It really is. And you might think I'm crazy because I'm almost just stitching white, and I'm totally in love with this. And if you wonder where my other hand is, since you only can see my left hand, there's where my clock is. That is because I am stitching two-handed. So I have my dominant hand, my right hand, I'm right-handed. So my dominant hand is underneath the fabric. I think you can see it through the fabric now. There's my hand. And I'm taking the needle with my hand underneath, pulling the floss through and putting it back up. And my left hand sits there ready to receive it when the needle comes up to go down again. So I tried to do my non-dominant hand underneath in the beginning when I tried stitching double-handed, because it takes a little bit of time to get used to, but it goes much quicker when stitching when I stitch two-handed. But I couldn't quite get my left hand to operate as well as my dominant hand, because I think I had heard or seen someone stitching two-handed, and they said you should use your dominant hand on top and your left at the bottom, because the most important part was to get the stitches from the top looking the nicest. So that's why you should have your dominant hand on top, controlling the stitches from the top. But that didn't work for me. I tried and tried, and at once, almost, when I switched hands to have my dominant underneath, it suddenly went much better stitching two-handed. And I don't think my stitches look too bad from the top, so no worries there. And sometime like now you will see me just pulling a little bit on the floss. It's just to try to unwind the floss a tiny bit, because you can see it's about to start misbehaving again, and if I can see it early enough, then it's easier to fix it. And it's easier to stop it from knotting and so. I'm actually impressed on how few knots I have had in this A to Z stitch with me so far. So I don't know, it's because I just stitch a little bit slower, or what it is, but or just a very good skein of white, I don't know. So sorry there if you didn't see just the last few stitches I did. But I was thinking there is about 10 minutes left of filming, so I will just park my white floss right here. I usually park often with doing a half a stitch coming up, and instead of completing the stitch, I just lay the floss to hang, to be parked. So, I think that I might want to do a little bit of green over here. So I need to find my ruler because I put my floss on the ruler and go once and twice and up again, and then I cut the length, and it basically is, because I have found that is the perfect length of floss for me, but also because I have a good amount of blended floss projects, and having the lengths be the same is a really nice thing to do. So, and I just redid my pull of the floss here to be able to show you what I do. So I just stab the end a little bit, so the floss at the top divide itself. Then I take one of the strands and just pull it up, sometimes a little bit up and out to the side, while I just hold it right there with my fingers. And when it starts to twin up at the end, I will lay my fingers around and pull the last one. This is just for the floss to easier untangle from the ones I just pulled, and then I just pull it out. And this is the length of floss with multiple strands in it, and I twin it around, trying to twin it around my bobbin, catching the tail from the skein that is not uncut, that is wound around like that. And my strand of floss I have here put to the side, and I will just pull it out, just stroking gently through it one time, just to make it not tangle up as much and to make the stitches lay nicer when I start to stitch. So again, holding the floss tight and pulling it off the needle, taking the eye over the floss, just pushing down. You see no wiggling, I just push down, grab what came and pull through. So, and now I need my pattern. Easy access for me. So yeah, you still can see. Good. I don't want to show the pattern. So on the third X, we're going to do 2 out. So 1, 2. And there is going to be 1 and 2 stitches here. And then I'm gonna do 2 half stitches here, going down, because where I want to jump next is a stitch over here, and it's longer for me to jump from here to there than it is from here to there. So that's why I'm trailing these green stitches using the Danish method, and then I will go back and do the stitches again. And now I start at the top to go down, because when I get over to stitch these stitches, if I had done the other way, it would be in the same hole as I was supposed to go up to complete the half stitch. So I just... And these stitches I did from the top down. I explained why I sometimes do that in another video. But it has to do with the length I'm going. So when the stitches go down to bottom, then it also, they look a little bit nicer if you then do the top leg from the top of the stitch to the bottom of the stitch. And now, since I did this stitch from the top down, I can go and do this stitch from the bottom to the top. Completing those 4 stitches. And now I had 1 stitch here, and I want to do it from the bottom instead of from the top, the first leg, just because if I do it from here, I will get a straight line with the floss underneath, and that is more viable to show through the fabric than if you go on a diagonal underneath. So that's why I do it that direction. And now I also go bottom to bottom, mostly because that is the way I usually do my stitches, but also because I am going to jump straight down, and I don't want my floss to end in this hole when I'm going down, because that will prolong the leg of my stitch and make it just looking a tiny bit the way I don't necessarily like it. And I am actually we are going to make this again, these 2 stitches like that, but I will jump to this stitch, I think, because I don't want to have a straight line with my floss. So I'm going to jump to this stitch and then trail these 2 other stitches. and then do the second stitch beside them. And I am almost showing you the pattern. So sorry for that. I need to find a good place to have my pattern while stitching with you guys, so I don't show it off. And now I'm going to do, and this branch has 2 stitches on either side of it as this and this motif. So going to go and do those. And I do these in the same direction just so the stitches will lay nicer beside each other, and I still can easily go down to the next stitch, because I want the stitch to end at the top since I'm going down, so I don't prolong the leg, but rather on the back side of my fabric, the floss will go downwards. So in a way, making this stitch fold around the fabric. The whole of the fabric is going down and downwards, because I don't like prolonged legs when stitching. Those has given me a lot of trouble previously, and they also will often just don't look as nice. So let's see. And now I want to do this stitch. And do it exactly like the last branch I did, because this branch and the branch over is identical. Yep, I think I did that the wrong way. Yep. Said I was going to do it the exact same way, and then I suddenly forgot myself while stitching. But I usually notice right away. So it's just backtracking a stitch or half a stitch. So no worries. And this 3 is looking more and more amazing. I love the colors the pattern has chosen for this tree, and both the brown and the green color. It doesn't look like it on the picture. The tree actually looks a little more like a reddish brown, the stem. And the green look more like it just look a little bit lighter. But but I think this looks much better. So I will do these 2 stitches, and then I will park on the next place I am supposed to start stitching, because I am way over my recording time. So that was part 4 of this A to C stitch with me and my raccoon cabin. Starting to make some really good progress, I think. So thank you so much for watching and supporting the series. I hope you enjoy it, and if you guys enjoy it enough, I will most likely continue doing this A to C stitch with me. I will at least finish off this pattern in the A to C stitch with me, and go from there and see if I am making it longer. Either continue doing the rest of the motifs, not the motifs, the patterns, or if we are doing another pattern. So that is what I had for you today. Take care, everyone, and happy stitching. And I will see you next time. Goodbye.